I remember the way his voice dropped when he said goodnight, low and warm, as though it lingered in the air just for me. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that makes every breath feel louder, every heartbeat heavier. I told myself to walk away, to close the door, but when I caught his eyes in the dim hallway light, something in me refused to let go. Disclaimer: this content is intended for mature audiences only. Viewer discretion is advised. Al had been staying over for 3 nights now, just helping out my husband, Mark, with some late-night work projects they couldn't finish at the office. It was innocent, at least, it was supposed to be. Al was Mark's best friend since college, the kind of guy you can't help but notice even when you don't mean to. Tall, dark hair a little messy from the long day, and a smile that could slice through the tension in any room. Except now, that smile wasn't easing my nerves. It was making everything worse. The first 2 nights, I kept my distance. I made coffee, passed him in the hallway, and tried not to notice how close his arm brushed mine when he reached for the sugar. But tonight felt different. Mark had fallen asleep early on the couch after hours of spreadsheets and calls, leaving Al and me alone in the quiet living room. The glow from the TV painted his face in soft shadows, and the way he looked at me, like he was trying not to, sent a pulse of something through my chest I couldn't name. I shouldn't have sat beside him, not when the whole couch was open, not when I could practically hear the blood rushing in my ears as he leaned back, stretching, his shirt riding up just slightly. We talked about nothing, weather, movies, work, and every word felt like it was balancing on the edge of something heavier. Something neither of us said. At one point, his hand brushed mine on the cushion. A simple mistake. I could have moved away. I didn't. Neither did he. The silence that followed wasn't awkward, it was electric, charged, like the room itself was holding its breath, waiting for what we'd do next. I glanced toward the hallway, where Mark slept only a few feet away, unaware. My heart pounded harder with every passing second, torn between what I should do and what I couldn't seem to stop wanting. When Al's eyes met mine again, there was a question there, unspoken, but I felt it all the same. And in that moment, I realized, this night wasn't going to end the way it should. The air between us felt heavier after that glance, as though the silence carried more weight than any words could. I could hear the faint hum of the fridge in the kitchen, the low ticking of the clock on the wall, every small sound magnified in the stillness. Al didn't move his hand, and neither did I. We didn't have to speak to know something had shifted in that moment, something we were both trying, and failing, to ignore. I told myself to focus on anything else, the muted TV, the soft throw blanket draped over the couch, the fact that Mark was just down the hallway asleep, but my eyes kept finding Al in my peripheral vision. The way his jaw tightened when he exhaled, like he was holding something back. The way his thumb slowly traced the edge of the couch cushion as though to distract himself from reaching for me. It hadn't always been like this. Al had been part of our lives for years, practically family. Backyard barbecues, holidays, late nights with laughter and drinks. He was the easygoing one, the guy who'd tease me for burning dinner but then jump in to help without asking. Nothing about him had ever felt dangerous, until now. Maybe it was the way things had changed lately. Mark and I had been distant, buried in work and routines, our conversations more about schedules than feelings. Maybe that's why every small glance from Al felt louder now, more intimate than it ever had before. I shifted slightly, tucking my legs beneath me, trying to create some space, but all it did was make me more aware of the fact that he was still there, still close. I could feel the warmth radiating from his arm even though we weren't touching. My heartbeat refused to settle, no matter how much I told myself to calm down. Al cleared his throat softly, like he was about to speak, but stopped himself. Our eyes met again, brief, searching, charged. He looked away first, leaning back, his hand finally retreating, but it didn't erase the tension. If anything, it made it worse. Because now, the space between us wasn't just physical. It was filled with everything we weren't saying, everything we were thinking but couldn't admit. And in that quiet, I couldn't help but wonder, how long could we keep pretending? I couldn't tell if the pounding in my chest was louder than the quiet hum of the TV, but every beat felt heavier, like it was pulling me closer to something I wasn't ready to face. Al shifted beside me, the leather cushion creaking softly under his weight. He didn't look at me at first, his gaze fixed on the flickering images on the screen, but I could sense it, his awareness of me, the same way I felt his presence even when neither of us moved. I told myself to get up, to grab a glass of water, to put distance between us before this became something it shouldn't. But when I shifted to rise, his voice, low and quiet, stopped me. "You okay?" It was simple, but the way he said it, gentle, deliberate, made me freeze. I glanced at him, catching his eyes for just a moment. There was no playful smirk like usual, no teasing. Just that calm, steady look, as though he knew something was unraveling inside me. "I'm fine," I said, though it sounded more like a whisper than an answer. I wasn't fine. Not with my thoughts running places they shouldn't, not with the space between us feeling like it was pulling tighter, not looser. He nodded, looking back at the TV, but I caught the slight movement of his fingers on his knee, as if he was stopping himself from reaching toward me. It was such a small thing, but it sent a wave of heat through me that I couldn't explain. My throat felt dry. I pulled the throw blanket across my lap, more as a distraction than because I was cold. The sound of Mark shifting in the other room carried faintly through the hallway, a reminder of everything I was supposed to protect. Guilt pricked at me, but it didn't erase the current running beneath the surface. It only made it sharper. Minutes passed, but they felt heavier than hours. Every movement, every breath seemed louder. Al leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, his head tilted slightly down like he was deep in thought. When he finally spoke again, his voice was lower, almost careful. "This feels different tonight, doesn't it?" The words hung there, quiet but undeniable, like a confession neither of us had the courage to fully say. I swallowed hard, my fingers tightening around the edge of the blanket. I should have denied it, laughed it off, pretended it wasn't true. But instead, I sat there, silent, feeling the truth of it settle between us. I looked at him, really looked, and for the first time, I realized, if either of us made a move now, even the smallest one, there would be no turning back. The room felt smaller than it was, as though the walls were closing in with every passing second. The soft flicker of the TV cast shifting shadows across Al's face, tracing the tension in his jaw, the way his eyes kept avoiding mine yet finding their way back when he thought I wasn't looking. My fingers gripped the blanket tighter, the fabric twisting between them as if holding on to something solid would quiet the storm rising inside me. Every sound seemed amplified, the faint hum of the fridge, the creak of the house settling, the quiet rhythm of Mark's breathing down the hall. It was all there, in the background, but none of it drowned out the weight of this moment. Al's presence felt louder than all of it, his nearness pulling at me like gravity. He leaned back slightly, stretching his arm along the top of the couch, his fingertips just barely brushing the cushion near my shoulder. It wasn't a touch, not really, but it felt like one. I felt my breath catch, sharp and shallow, as if the air between us had thickened. I should have moved. I didn't. Al's voice broke the silence, low and quiet. "You can feel it too, can't you?" The words sank into me like a whisper I wasn't supposed to hear. I turned my head, meeting his eyes, and the look there, hesitant, questioning, but undeniably drawn, made my pulse stutter. For a heartbeat, neither of us moved, suspended in something we didn't dare name. My mind screamed to stand, to break the spell before it became something we couldn't undo, but my body betrayed me. I stayed, every inch of me aware of how close his hand was to mine, how the faint warmth from him reached me like a ghost of a touch. The hallway clock ticked softly, marking each second as if counting down to something inevitable. The air between us felt alive, thick with words left unsaid and choices neither of us had made yet, but were close to. Very close. And in that suspended breath of a moment, I knew, whatever happened next, everything would change. The soft ticking of the hallway clock seemed to grow louder, like each second was pushing us closer to a point we couldn't come back from. Al's hand was still resting along the back of the couch, his fingers barely brushing the fabric near my shoulder, and though we weren't touching, it felt like we were. Every breath felt too shallow, every inch of space between us charged, ready to snap. And then, the creak of a floorboard. My heart leapt as Mark's shadow shifted faintly in the hallway. For a moment, I thought he was awake, coming toward us, and the shock of it broke whatever spell had us frozen there. I sat up straighter, putting space between myself and Al, my hands gripping the edge of the couch so tightly my knuckles ached. But Mark didn't come in. A beat later, the sound of a soft snore drifted down the hall. He'd only shifted in his sleep. Still, the jolt lingered. I glanced at Al, and he was already watching me. His expression had shifted, not teasing, not even conflicted anymore. It was serious now, like he knew just how close we were to crossing a line. He broke the silence first. "This can't happen," he said, his voice low, almost a whisper. But the way his gaze stayed on mine betrayed him. It wasn't a declaration, it was a warning to himself, maybe to me, too. I nodded, but my body didn't feel like it believed the words. My chest was tight, my pulse still racing. I remembered the way his voice had sounded earlier, when he'd said goodnight the first evening he stayed over. Low, warm, lingering. That memory flickered through me now, sharper than before, as if it had been waiting for this exact moment to resurface and remind me how this started. The room felt too quiet, too expectant, like even the walls were holding their breath. Al shifted closer, not much, just enough that I could feel the faint heat radiating off his arm. My stomach twisted, a mix of guilt and something I couldn't name, something I didn't want to admit out loud. And then, the twist. The glow of Mark's phone lit up the hallway, faint but visible from where we sat. A text alert, screen flashing, the sound muted but the glow unmistakable. Al's eyes flicked toward it, and something unreadable crossed his face. I followed his gaze, and in that faint blue light, I caught a name on the screen, a woman's name I didn't recognize. The tension shifted, deepened. The air between us felt heavier, more dangerous. Now, it wasn't just about us. It was about what that glow in the hallway meant, and how quickly everything in this house was about to change. The faint glow of Mark's phone still pulsed down the hallway, casting a cool, ghostly light across the floor. That soft blue against the warm gold of the living room felt almost surreal, like two worlds colliding, one I thought I knew, and one I suddenly didn't. My breath caught as the name flashed again. A woman. Not a coworker I recognized, not a friend I'd ever heard of. Just a single word on the screen, like a secret I was never supposed to see. Al's jaw tightened, his eyes flicking from the hallway back to me. Neither of us said it out loud, but I saw the thought cross his face, the same one running through mine. Mark isn't as innocent as we thought. The silence thickened, no longer just about us. The weight shifted, our tension, our guilt, and now, this new thread of betrayal, weaving all of it into something neither of us could untangle. My pulse hammered, not just from what was between Al and me, but from what I now knew about the man sleeping just feet away. Al leaned closer, his voice low, almost a breath. "You saw it, didn't you?" I nodded, my throat dry. The air between us crackled with something different now, not just temptation, but understanding, shared and heavy. And maybe that's why, when his hand finally found mine, I didn't pull away this time. The warmth of his touch felt like release, like all the tension building over nights and whispers and glances finally breaking open. For a moment, we just sat there, his fingers lacing with mine, the world narrowing to the quiet hum of the TV and the glow down the hall. It wasn't reckless or frantic. It was slow, deliberate, the kind of moment that feels inevitable after everything that came before. And then, just as his other hand brushed lightly against my cheek, the sound of a door creaking broke the air like a crack of thunder. Both our heads snapped toward the hallway. Mark wasn't there, just the faint outline of the open bedroom door, the phone's glow now gone. But someone had moved it. The hallway felt like a void, every sound in the house amplified as I stared at the open bedroom door. The phone's glow had gone dark, but the shadow it left was heavier than light could cast. Al's hand was still around mine, warm, grounding, and I couldn't tell if it steadied me or pushed me further into the storm I was standing in. Mark didn't appear. No footsteps, no voice. Just the faint creak of the house, the hum of the fridge, and the weight of what had just unfolded, between all three of us, even if none of us had spoken yet. I released Al's hand slowly, feeling the ghost of his touch linger even as I stood. I need to see, I whispered, though my voice barely sounded like my own. My feet felt heavy, each step toward the hall deliberate, as though I was walking into something I couldn't turn back from. When I reached the door, I saw the phone lying face down on the dresser, the screen now black. No one was in the room. Just the soft indentation on the bed where Mark had been, and the faint scent of his cologne lingering in the air. Behind me, Al's voice was quiet, but certain. He saw us. I didn't turn, but I felt it. The truth of it. The way the phone had been moved, the sudden darkness, the open door, it wasn't an accident. Mark had seen enough, maybe everything. And yet, he hadn't said a word. The rest of the night passed like a blur. Mark never came back into the living room. Al eventually left, his eyes lingering on me with a mixture of apology and something unspoken before he stepped out into the night. I stood in the dim light for what felt like hours, replaying everything, the glances, the tension, the phone, the way my choices had led to this exact moment. When I finally crawled into bed beside Mark, the silence between us was different. Not just distance, but knowing. A quiet acknowledgement that none of us were who we were yesterday. As I lay there, eyes tracing the dark ceiling, I remembered the first night Al stayed over, the way his goodnight had lingered, low and warm, a sound I hadn't been able to forget. That moment, so small then, had been the beginning of everything. And now, nothing in this house would ever feel the same again.